Good morning, Flood Church. My name is Zach, and I serve as one of the pastors here. And as Pastor Humphrey said, we are continuing in our sermon series, Drop the Mask. And today, we'll be answering the question, what are you leaning on? What are you leaning on? I'm a really huge football fan, for some who call it soccer. But we have started the 4-year wait that we have of the World Cup, and the World Cup has started. I'm one of the few people that does not mind waking up at odd hours to actually watch something. I love basketball so much, and I love the NFL, so I wake up at 3 a.m. just to watch some of these things, and it happens. I do that every maybe 2-3 days, but right now, people have to wake up every single day. I'm at the point in my life where sleep is actually something that I treasure. All the 30s are nodding and accepting. I'm at the point where sleep is very important to me. And I remember I was really excited about the movie Coming to America Part 2. So my wife and I are like, yes, Coming to America is coming out, and yeah, let's watch it. So the routine in my house is we get dinner sorted, and then we sit down, start watching that movie while eating dinner. So 45 minutes into the movie, I doze off. And then my wife wakes me. I was like, hey, you guy, let's go sleep. So I'm like, okay, let's try again tomorrow. The next day, we do the very same routine, dinner, sit by the TV, we start watching. 30 minutes, 45 minutes into the movie, my wife falls asleep. And I'm like, aha, you see? My friend, let's go sleep. We had to finish that movie in 3 sittings. And we started asking the questions, like, what were the directors thinking? Because when you start to look at Coming to America, the first one, it was like a really good work of art. And now the second one was just, it was okay. And now we started to channel our inner Steven Spielberg and Spike Lee and being the best directors that we can to say, you know, what were these guys thinking? If you were given the opportunity to direct your life, what would that look like? If you were given the opportunity to be the director of your life, what would that look like? Would you be praying the very same prayers that you're praying right now? Or maybe all the troubles that you have in your life would go away because you just want smooth sailing. If you were given the opportunity to be the director of your life, would any of the troubles that you went through in this life be there? Or maybe you'd want everything to be perfect. Because that's what we try to do each and every day. We want to direct our own lives. We want to be at the center of how things move in our lives. Because if I had it my own way, there's certain troubles that I'm going through right now. If I was to direct my life, those wouldn't even make 5 seconds in the movie. And this is where this passage leads us. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, not some of your ways, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. Because this is easy for us to look at it from a point of where I'm standing right now. Because I've gone through all these things and I've trusted God and certain things have gone the way that I wanted. But when you're in the middle of the things that are happening, the heartache, the loss, the no's, the disappointments, it's hard to trust the director. In the middle of all the chaos, it's hard to trust the one directing you. Because this was not actually written for people who did not believe. People who do not believe are not even asked to trust the Lord with all their heart because they don't trust him at all in the first place. It is written for you and I who believe. But we trust God with the salvation of our lives, but don't want to trust him with directing our path. We want to say, Jesus, I give you my life, but in this direction, I'll go the way I want to. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Not certain things, not just this much, but with all your heart. What would trusting God with all your heart look like for you today? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. So the two observations that I want us to look at this morning that will help us to understand how we drop this mask of what we are leaning on. The first one is a positional surrender, and we see this in verse 5. It says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Trust is not an emotion. Trust is not an emotion. It is a relocation of your safety. Trust is not an emotion. It is a relocation of your safety. You are saying to yourself that, God, I'm choosing to trust you, not because I know that I have everything figured out, but I know that I'm safe in your hands. Because in some other cases, certain things that you would trust God for will not make sense to you. Because it will be contrary to everything that you believe in to be safe, but you will say to God, because I know you have never left me. I know your word says you never leave me nor forsake me. So my safety is not in what I know, but my safety is in you. So it is a relocation of your safety. It is not an emotion. It is not because I felt it in me. Like I had a certain feeling. That's why I said I'm going to trust God. Because there will be some times where you don't feel like it. Those certain chills you get down your spine when you want to trust God will not come certain times. Because it is not an emotion. Because when this word says lean, to lean is to transfer all your weight onto something that you know that can actually carry you. Have you ever seen someone who has broken their leg and they're using crutches? They are leaning their weight on something they know that will be able to carry them. And because of just the certain things that we have or the certain things that we do or the amount of zeros that are in our bank account or lack thereof, we lean on those things to say, you know what, this can carry me. I've been through this before, so I know my experience will carry me. I can lean on my experience. I've got 2 masters and a PhD that's pending. I can lean on this. It can support me. You know what? I know someone who knows someone who knows someone. I can lean on my connections. They can carry me. So you're putting all your weight on something that you think, that you know will be able to sustain you. But the problem with all that is everything that we know has limitations. Everything that we trust on will have limitations. It will carry us to a certain extent. And then it will get to a point where it's between you and your God. Because your education will get you somewhere. Your money will get you somewhere. Your connections will get you somewhere. But they will not carry you through all of it. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. So you have to surrender the position of saying, I've been there before. Or my education has taught me this. My money can do all this. To now saying, God, take this place. Because what this exposes for us is the complex that we have of I can control it all. And we're living in a world where we have everything to control at the tip of our fingers. We haven't gotten to that far here in Malawi, but In developed countries, they have smart homes where I can start heating up my food while I'm still at work, and when I get home, I'll find my geyser switched on and everything to the way that I want, because I can control my life just by one click. And now you go from being that person who can control your life just by one click to now submitting to a God that wants you to say, be patient, I'm working. To say, you know what? I'm not about just spreading out, I'm about going deep. How deep is your relationship with me? When we find a God who is that disruptive, it is hard for us to actually think that he is in control. Because he seems like he's a God who is too slow. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Because the control in us is saying, God, I invite you in this room. Take your place. But after you invite God into this room, the final decision is made by you. So now, you inviting God into that space is just for formality's sake. Just to say, you know what? We always start with prayer. There's no meeting in Malawi that doesn't start with prayer. We're like, is anyone going to volunteer to start with a prayer? You go to the Grand Business Park to get a bus. Before the bus leaves, any volunteer to pray? You're just inviting God. God, just come through and make your appearance, and then we can move on with our business. And that's basically what we have reduced God to. We trust God, not with all our hearts. And we lean on our own understanding. We lean on our experiences. We invite God just to do enough and we do the rest. So God, just come and bless us with a prayer, and just start with a prayer. And when we need you at the end, we'll thank you for just everything that happened. So we trust God with some part of our hearts. We trust God with just a little bit of his understanding. But most of the stuff we do it on our own. We just invite God for just enough. Because we have this complex of being in control. But what this exposes is something that's far deeper. There is a superficial layer that each and every one of us has that is rooted in a spiritual problem that we all have. And the first one is, it's an illusion of we're standing firm. We have this illusion of we're standing firm on God. We have an illusion of standing firm in God. Because, you know what? I started in prayer. God is with me. You started in prayer, but how did you carry on the whole business? Did God actually make a show in there, or it was just during the prayer and at the end of the prayer and everything else was the way that you wanted? It is an illusion that God is with us. But everything else, you did it out your own spirit. The illusion of saying God is with us. Where in actual reality, you put your weight on everything else but God. Where you put your weight on corruption, but you started with God. Where you put your weight on certain deals and people that I know, but, when we were dedicating this shop, we brought in our pastor and he blessed this shop. And everything that has to do with that shop is corruption and deal after another. I fasted and prayed for this guy or this girl. And after you got into that relationship, it was sin after sin after sin after sin. And you invite God again when you want to get married. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Because in reality, your position of strength is leaning on to your own understanding and being independent of the Creator that you need to seek. You're independent of the Creator that should direct your path. You're independent of the Creator that should be your foundation. You have the appearance of a devout, prayerful, and sold out believer. But deep down inside of you, you're sincerely just asking him to say, just open for us, and then leave the room, and I'll do the rest. How many times have we asked God to just open for us and showed him the exit door to say, you know what? I've got it from here. I will handle it from here. If I need you, I'll call you back. But from this point on, I've got it. We're good. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Because the real tragedy is we hide our stubborn self-reliance in a mask that shows as if we have God on our side, and cover it with prayer and words that sound so Christian. But our stubborn self-control is at the bottom of it all, where we know all the Christianese that we can speak for people to actually think that, you know what? This guy actually knows Jesus. If you saw on the promotional video, Kelvin said, you know what? I've got this. And after he took off the mask, he said, I need Jesus. And maybe some of us are at that point, where we speak so much Christianese and people think, this is the right person for me to actually go to. But they just need Jesus the very same way that you do. But we come here and pretend that we have it all together. What would it look like for you to drop your mask? The second observation is intimate surrender. The first one was positional surrender. The second one is intimate surrender. We see this in verse 6. It says, in all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. And acknowledge in this passage, it is not the way that we know the word acknowledge. Because there's sometimes that we think acknowledge is a musician, your favorite artist, winning an award and saying, the first thing is, I would like to thank God for this award, and it ends there. Or maybe for some of us who like to wear a necklace that has a cross on there, we acknowledge that we're Christians. Or maybe you have a tattoo that's got a cross or some Christian words to it. You acknowledge that you're a Christian. That people will just look at you and say, this guy is a Christian. It is not just acknowledging in passing. The root word of acknowledge in this context is a position of intimacy, where you know God with all your heart. And it is not just one of saying, you know, I've heard about him, or I see him every once in a while. In all your ways, acknowledge him. Because the flip side is how we acknowledge God, where we just invite him for prayer and then we do our own things. But God is calling us to a surrender, to intimately surrender to him, where we devote all our heart to him, that no decision that we make in our lives will be made without him, that we're not going to move if Jesus doesn't say that we should move. We're not going to act on certain things if God doesn't say that we should act on them. It is to intimately surrender to him. You must recognize Jesus. You must recognize God in every circumstance, event, up and down in your life. There's no room to say, this is where God is shown in my life, and these other parts, I'll handle it myself. You're trusting God with all your heart and not leaning on your own understanding. But in all your ways, in everything that you do, you're acknowledging him. In everything that you do, you're seeing him. So does this mean that you end up being passive in everything that you do? No. He's not asking you to stop thinking. He's not asking you to stop making plans. He's not asking you to say, you know what? At this point, this is where your brain stops working. Because that's where some of these things happen as well, where we are brainwashed to say, you know what? Stop thinking when you start praising God. And now everything that you knew about studies and everything like that go to waste because, you know what, I'm trusting in God. I'm not even going to use my brain for it. No. Plan. Make those plans. Write those things down. Have a forecast to say, you know what, in the next 2 years, in the next 3 years, this is what I'm looking to do. In the next 5 years, this is where I want to see myself. In the next 10 years, this is where I'm seeing myself. Do those plans. It's not an excuse to be passive. I'm repeating this. It's not an excuse for you to be passive. But what he's asking you is, where is your weight being carried? Who is carrying your weight? Who is sustaining you? Who is your foundation? Because if your foundation is on anything and everything else but him, then we are destined to fail. And when he says he will make your path straight, there are some translations that says he will direct your path. Some translations will say he will make your path straight. So does this mean that everything else now will just flow smoothly? No. It is not smooth sailing from here. In fact, it's far from that. For some of us, we prayed for that college that we really wanted to. We got into the college, we graduated, and we're very excited. And years have passed, and we haven't gotten a single job. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. We prayed for that relationship, we got married, and that dream wedding was the talk of the town, and now you're in that marriage, but it's far from what you imagined. Trust in the Lord. You prayed for that dream job, and you were really excited to say, this is my first day of work. Growth group, help me pray for this. You went to that workspace. That dream job is such a nightmare. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Because it's far from everything being perfect. It doesn't say, and I'll make everything smooth for you. It doesn't say, I'll make everything smooth sailing. No, but I will direct your path. Because you find hurdles, you find bumps, you find curves. But I'll direct you in those hurdles. I'll direct you in those curves. I'll direct you when you meet those bumps. Because if there's one thing that is true for each and every one of us as we trust and follow God, those hard times are coming. But the good thing is, when those hard times come to you, and you know that you're leaning on the foundation of Jesus Christ, you are at a better position than leaning on your own understanding. Because those are actually coming. We're living in a world and in a country where every single month there is some news that's coming out of our currency going crazy, fuel doing all sorts of things, and there's just, when you see a huge red-lettered headline, we're in for something else. And because you're a Christian, it's not like you're exempt from any of that. At the end of the day, you either have to get on a bus or fuel up your car. Those problems will still be there. Whether you sleep on a fuel queue, those things will still be there. We are not exempt from a life of hardship. In fact, it is coming for each and every one of us. But where God is calling us, He is calling us from a place of not leaning on your own understanding, but acknowledging Him and seeing Him through it all. In the diagnosis results that you got, you're saying, God, I know this says something else, but I trust you. You applied for that job and you got a no. And you're saying, you know what? I acknowledge you, God, that even in this no, I see you. In that business that is failing, you say to God, you know what, God, this business is not going as I wanted it to go, but I see you. In all your ways, acknowledge him. We are being called out of from a life of self-sufficiency to a life of total surrender. From Christianity that is performative to Christianity that is intimate with God. That I don't care what other people say in this place. That I'm not here to perform to anyone. When I raise my hands and I'm crying out to God, I'm not doing that so such and such can see me. I'm not performing for anyone. You're going from saying, you know what, I want people to know that I'm a Christian, to you actually saying, I'm doing this to please an audience of one, and that is your Father. That you're not putting on a mask to say, you know what, I've got everything all together. You're standing up to say, you know what, my life is not as everyone thinks it is. In fact, the last time that I opened the Bible was last Sunday because Pastor Humphrey said, stand up and we'll read the passage. You know what, I'm going through a lot in my life right now that I can't even pray for myself. Like life has been happening to me that I can't even sit down and pray. I don't have it in me to pray. I remember, I think for the past 3-4 years, the last time I opened Psalm 91 was just this past week. Because I was trusting God to heal someone close to me. And I was praying Psalm 91 over them. And to me, I was like, this is God's promise. And I was really excited about this promise that God gives in his word. And this person ended up passing. And I was like, God, you're not true to your promise because your word is saying this. Because if you are trusting and putting your expectations on God with your own desired outcomes in your head, whatever happens that is contrary to the outcome that you wanted, you will end up faulting God. Because subconsciously you are praying for that job and you already see yourself in that job because I like the benefits that it has because they're going to give me a car, they're going to give me a house, they're going to give me a couple of millions there, so I'm good with where I'm going. When you pray and those outcomes don't come through, then you start to fault God because you trusted God because of the outcomes that you wanted. Because if you trusted God with the outcomes that God is going to give you, even when he says no, you still trust him. Even when he says no, you say, God, thank you. Because I don't trust you because of the outcomes that I'm expecting. I trust you knowing that in your no, you have a far much better plan than the yes that I'm expecting. Because sometimes we find ourselves very angry, anxious, and in fear because the no that God is going to give me is not the outcome that I was expecting. We have also turned our faith into a strategy to secure smooth and comfortable sailing. And there's this gospel that is being preached to say, you know what? When you trust in God, you don't have to forsake. When you trust in God, how are you going to be broke when the Father of heaven is rich and has all the gold and silver and everything? How are you trusting this God and you're still broke? So we are twisting this gospel into a strategy of smooth sailing. And now when you are in this space and you're not doing good financially or certain things are not going really well and you don't have any smooth sailing, You're feeling sick. Now you start to think to yourself, if I tell these people that I'm sick, I'm going to be looked at as a weak Christian. If I tell them that this is the last 5,000 kwacha that I have, they're going to think that my Christianity is not as good as it seems. Because we have started to paint this picture of when you trust in God, everything should go on smoothly. No problems and nothing else. We're being called to drop the mask. Drop whatever crutches that you have. Stop trying to carry the weight that you can't sustain. Stop trying to carry the weight that you can't sustain. I want to close with these application prompts for each and every one of us. The first one is to understand your crutch. Understand your crutch. When life gets chaotic, where is the very first place you naturally run to for you to feel safe? Do you run to your bank account? Do you run to your job? Do you run to the relationships that you have? What makes you feel safe? For some of us, it's, you know what, I enjoy just going out to eat. That will not sustain you. For some, it's I love shopping. Shopping makes me feel some certain way. It's not going to sustain you. Some of us, you know what, if I just have a glass of wine, if I just drink, maybe if I smoke, it's not going to sustain you. Where do you find yourself running to? Where do you find yourself running to? What is your crutch? Understand what is your crutch. The second thing is dealing with control. Anxiety, anger, and fear sometimes prove where trust is. What does practical surrender look like for you after all this? Because when you say amen, when you say that amen, and those high-stakes situations present themselves, that is where your trust is. It's easy to invite God to say, let's open with a prayer. And after you say amen, you have everything in your hands again. But what does that look like for you? When the high-stakes situations present themselves. When that person that you're praying for is actually getting worse. When you applied for that job and a few of your friends that you applied with are saying, you know, I got a call back. They say I should go for an interview next week, Tuesday. Another person is saying, you know what? I just got a call back as well. And you are the only one that's not gotten a response yet. What does trust look like when you say amen? Are you living in fear? Are you filled with anxiety? Or are you angry that certain things did not go the way that you pictured them to go? And the last one is, when you look at your current bumps or hurdles or any unexpected curves in your life right now, how does shifting your focus from the road to the director change how you handle them? How does it look like when you shift your focus from how bumpy the road is to shifting your focus to who your director is look like for you? Because for some of us, we're so afraid of just how bumpy and curvy the road looks and forgetting who our director is. Those curves are coming. Those bumps are coming. Those hurdles are coming. But what would it look like if you shifted your focus? So for some of us, it's to understand what is the problem. For some of us, it's to deal with our control, and for some of us, this is shift our focus. But each and every one of us is at a certain level here. The word says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding, and in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. My prayer is we let God control our lives. We let God direct our lives and watch him do great, amazing things. Amen.